Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Tim Sudano, your favorite paranormal investigator, and this is Paranormal Insight. Tonight, we're talking about the Djinn, and this is continuing our series on folklore and things that we're discovering that were once kind of mythological are now becoming more historical. So, tonight we're going to talk about the Djinn, and they are chiefly an ultra-dimensional being or set of beings, but I'm going to have bring our two experts on to talk about it. We have JJ Rose, who is my partner in Scary, and my very good friend, fellow filmmaker and anthropologist, Samer Abu AlRagheb. I think I messed up your name, Samer, but my apologies. So please say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, lovely beings.
Hello. Well, so let's get a little insight into what the Djinn are. First and foremost, whoever wants to go first, you're both pretty much experts in the field, so go ahead. Between the two of you, go.
JJ, you want to go first?
Well, Samer, why don't we kind of start in tandem with you talking about what we know from the Quran about the Djinn.
Okay. So the Djinn in the Quran is a being that lives in a different dimension. Some funny thing, some physicists or quantum physicists claim that, or into the Islamic religion, there are also physicists, they claim that they might be living in the 4th or 6th or 10th dimension. We don't know for sure. And they are made out of smokeless fire.
Sorry, let me pause you right there. On my end, your sound cut out a little bit, so I'm going to repeat the thing about quantum physics.
Okay, yeah. So basically, some scholars and physicists claim that the Djinn live in a different realm, right? But these realms are like the 4th dimension, the 6th dimension. We live in the 3rd dimension over here. So we don't see them because they live in that dimension. Also, the Djinn is, as I mentioned, made out of smokeless fire. A good example is the Human Torch from Marvel, where he turns into fire and there's, this figure of a person and there's no smoke coming from the fire. Other scholars claim that the Djinn not only is made out of smokeless fire, the being itself, they are shift shapers.
Shape.
Thank you. Well, dyslexia. Apologize.
That's hard.
Apologies. Shapeshifters.
Shifters. Yeah, it's a mouthful.
And they go in and out of realms as they please. You want to add to that, JJ? I could keep going.
Yeah. So I'm going to pick up on things that I've talked about before on some of my content as well as on Tim's show. But one thing that gets brought up a lot is that the Djinn are made out of the smokeless fire, right? And I don't know about you guys, but there's a lot going on lately about plasma and plasmoids.
Yeah.
And if you think about, right? And so if you think about from an earlier perspective of you're trying to describe what this is, a smokeless fire. They didn't have lights the way that we do. They didn't have electricity. So how else to describe a smokeless fire, like an orb lit up or something like that, where the being is literally lit from inside and glowing, but yet there's no smoke. And I mean, if you go back through the lore, there's tons of from everywhere in the world that we have history written down. There are these beings that appear illuminated from within, or they're glowing, right? Depending on the word that you want to use. So I found that interesting. Something that I've brought up, I found this It's on the NASA website. I'm happy to provide that link. But it is an article from 2008 that they have discovered that there is a portal from the sun to the earth every 8 minutes.
Yes,
according
I
to
saw
NASA.
that. It's a phenomenal phenomena. Hey,
Yeah,
say that
and
3
trust
times
me.
fast. Phenomenal
Yeah. Phenomenal phenomena. So I like peppering that in because, as Samar was saying, you have a beautiful marriage right now of people who are scientists, and they're going with these old lore, legends, history, and they're trying to understand, how do the two marry? Like, can this be real? Instead of just scoffing it off as, oh, that's make believe, or that's a religious belief, it's not true. But instead saying, we're able to prove a lot of the stuff that we've been talked about. It's just not exactly what we thought.
Right.
But
That's
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's exactly right.
Well, I mean, even if you look at all of the reports of orbs recently, there's some people who just see them and they're like, wow, that's weird. What is that? There's other people that have interfaced with them and gone to other places when they enter with these orbs and they're transported. So we're going to get into a lot in this episode, but that's just a little taste of where I'm going, Samar.
No, that's actually a good point you mentioned. I mean, it takes a great mind to, and Einstein said it best, imagination is better than numbers. In a sense, he said that. And he had a great imagination.
Yeah.
And the same thing with these scholars that try to claim that, okay, these orbs, what are they? Some people say it's energy balls. Others try to decipher in a different way. So for a person to be super devoted to a sect or a religion and having science not stopping that belief, it's pretty impressive. It's really cool. But no, I totally understand what you're trying to say. And yes, there are so many controversies about this topic. And the bottom line, it comes down to proving what it is.
Well, I think there's proving it, and then there's people who have seen this 6 ways from Sunday, but everyone's calling it something different.
Right.
I mean, so when you look at the Abrahamic religions themselves, all of them piggyback off of one another, and they all kind of pick up and fill in the blanks of the last one, right? So
in a way, I mean, yeah. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, not 100%, but to an extent, right? Like they all definitely, you can see that they're connected.
They are.
So even when you look, yeah, and so even when you look at the story of Solomon's temple being built, right, and the 72 Djinn that he had control over, I mean, it's interesting because, with your background, right, you're reading it in one aspect. And then with Tim and my background, we're reading it in another aspect. And I don't know about you guys, but that doesn't sound like such a great story. Like, why are we making Solomon the hero in this? Because he literally enslaved these beings to do his bidding.
Correct.
I
mean,
go ahead, Tim. I was going to say, if these creatures were indeed, I don't know, are you saying, JJ, I'm asking, are you saying that these people were ripped out of their element and forced basically turned into forced labor?
Yeah, that's how the story goes.
Okay. So in not only, well, not so much in the Bible really, but more in the Torah, and I think even the Talmud, I think, don't quote me on that, by the way, but there's Solomon controlled demons rather than jinn. Now, a lot of people associate those two terms as being one and the same, but if JJ is right, based on what Samar provided as far as the telling of what a jinn is, I could see that. I could see that point. And you're not the first person I've had on this show that says we need to learn to get along with the Djinn because we've been screwing them over for generations. And that's from a psychologist who had a paranormal experience, and then, their entire universe got flipped upside down, but they rolled with the punches. Good for them. But and that's Dr. Alcott. If you want to look up who that was, he was on my show a few months ago. But and he only briefly mentions the Djinn. It's like, yeah, we did bad things to the Djinn. We got to learn to get along with them. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're dealing with alternate dimensional stuff. So this kind of leads into my entire track on the series of interviews and shows, that we are dealing with a lot of beings and people and things that either get trapped here, travel here, or visit here, as far as versus I'm escaping my realm and coming to this one, or I'm gonna pop over there for, it's like going to St. Croix or something, or the Barbados or whatever. You pick a tropical paradise as a vacation spot. So if we're being visited by these people from an alternate dimension that are basically right next door, what do we do to, I guess, not only amend, but solidify a relationship between our two worlds that is amicable for both?
Well, I'm just going to start because I'm in a mood about something that was said, and I feel like this needs to be corrected because it keeps getting promulgated and dragged on, and then you have people who don't understand and haven't done a lot of history and study, especially on their own religion, whether it's their own or anybody else's. And so the word demon keeps getting thrown around. And the issue that I have is the word demon didn't even exist when the Bible was written. The Bible, the Torah, maybe around the time, it was after the Quran was even written. So before all of these, we gained that word. The word that was used was daemon. It had an EA in it. And it was primarily used around the Greek and Roman philosophers. And they talked about these beings that coexist with us, that occasionally help us, occasionally cause mischief, right? Or trickster beings. And then some who just didn't care. They just existed, right? And sometimes we saw them and sometimes we didn't. There were people who could talk with them. There were people who could sense them. But everyone generally knew that they existed. It's just whether or not you interacted with them or not. And then you get religion, which has to make everything a black or a white, right? It's either good or it's bad. And then that's when we started fractioning off and saying, oh, these aren't daemons anymore. These are demons. They're bad. And then we go into the fallen angel and that whole, trap. So, and I'm not saying this in order to upset anyone with their religion. I'm saying, let's get our history straight. That word was changed. So when you look back historically through the ancient texts and you look at it through the eyes of, they knew that there was this other, right? This other race of beings that existed and that coexisted with us. Sometimes they were pleasant, we got along, and sometimes we weren't, but there were different sects of them. They didn't all look like one thing. So we have the Djinn, we have the Fae, we have elementals, we have daemons, we have the little people. There are lots of different names depending on where you want to go, in the world. If you're in Central or South America, there's duendes. If you want to go, with native people, there's...
What am I hearing?
I don't know. It sounds like a train, though. They're here. But the reason I'm saying that is because there's so many tie-ins when you start looking at the actual lore, which is what I've been very busy doing the past 2 months, going through a bunch of these ancient stories. And I'm not talking about like in the past 200 years. I'm talking about 1,000, 3,000 years ago that I started going through, because I started to see this trend. And it's very, very easy if you look at the past 100, even 50 years. And, if you get on the conspiracy train, it's very easy to say, oh, well, the government messed with those reports or this or that or the other. Okay, I want stuff old before the government was doing any mind games with anybody, supposedly, right? I want to get that out of the equation completely. So one thing that was really, really interesting to me, and I'm going to pronounce it, and Samra, you can laugh at my Arabic because I'm sure it's very rusty. But there are 4 cardinal Djinn kings, right? And this story is about 1,200 years old. There's 4 cardinal Djinn kings. 2 of them, I'm going to pronounce the names, and I want you to tell me what it sounds like from another place. Tekal and Quetzalcoatl.
Yeah, one sounds Balinese almost. First one.
You said Quetzalcoatl?
Uh-huh.
I mean, honestly, it sounds more
almost South American. Yeah.
Doesn't it remind you of Quetzalcoatl?
Quetzalcoatl, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Tekal sounds like Tikal, which is also another place in Mayan and Aztec. There's an actual ruins called Tikal, but that place was named after some entity. And guess what the word Tikal means in ancient Aztec or Mayan? Bound.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Right. One small little thing I want to add is that we, in looking up the spelling of daemon and its meaning, according to Oxford Dictionary, it's an archaic spelling of demon, Daemon. It doesn't necessarily have a different branch, although in ancient Greek belief, it is noted as saying a divinity or supernatural being of nature between gods and humans. So I found that very fascinating.
So
and it kind of speaks to what you said.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I think the word demon in general is more of a broad look of what these supernatural beings are, because Lucifer could be a demon, but Lucifer is fucking Lucifer. Can we swear on this or no?
Try not to. We have to be kind of careful. We do go out on the air, so on the national.
So same thing with Satan. I mean, Satan and Lucifer supposedly the same thing, but Satan, the word didn't come out till King James's Bible, which is like 3rd century AD or something. Or was it later than that? It's later than that, actually. Nonetheless, but demon is a broad noun of these supernatural beings, and that's how I see it. So Djinn can be under the umbrella of demon, and demon can be a Djinn, but Djinn is like a specific kind of demon. Same thing with Ifrit. Ifrit in Arabic are like they call them like the little grays, like gray aliens. Actually.
Isn't that interesting? Which actually, keep going.
But that Ifrit is also considered a demon, but they're totally, Djinn and Ifrit are 2 different entities. 2 different beings.
Right.
So,
but they all go under the same lump of name, right? So Djinn would be like saying humans, right? But yet there's all different kinds of humans. We come from different places. We call ourselves different things. We look different, right? There's
like
small ones, different colors.
This is how I think of it when it comes to, so just to simplify everything. For example, in Norse mythology, a bunch of Norse mythology right now, you have the Jotunars and you have the Aesir's. Aesir's was Odin. The Jotunars were the giants. They're also called the lesser gods. Now, to differentiate them, when I was reading the Poetic Edda, I was like, okay, they call them the lesser god only because they are a different race from a different realm, which is true in the mythology. So Ifrit is a different race from Jinn, but still they're both demons. Yeah. So.
Well, and if you take it a step further, the word Jinn could, or Fae, or elementals, could be an all-encompassing word to say these things from this dimension, right? Whereas we humans, plus all the animals we coexist with that we can see and touch, we would be considered third dimensions.
Ignore that.
So the reason why I wanted to bring up the king names of the Jinn, and especially the fact of the 4 cardinal Jinn, because there's a whole thing, I could go down a rabbit hole with all that. But you have the 4 cardinals, right? So the 4 directions. And then you have 4 Jinn kings that rule every one of these cardinal directions.
Right.
The names sound an awful lot like gods that show up in Mayan and Aztec lore. Okay. And then I want you to think about the name Tikal, meaning the word bound, and think about what happened with Solomon. Who built Solomon's temple? It was enslaved Jinn. Well, who built the Mayan and Aztec pyramids? Because they think it's people, but yet again, we have the same thing with the pyramids in Egypt. Like, no one really knows, and we're not able to replicate anything as perfect as what these things are and how they're built. And if you go down to South America, you get a lot of the same different name crossover as well, which also shows me, okay, so we've got some crossover here. We were a global society. Everyone knew about these things at a specific time. It's only until really the past, 1,000 years that everyone started putting a kibosh on it and separating us out so that we started using different names for it. But again, even 1,000 years ago, the mass collective populace, they all knew that we coexisted with these beings.
Interesting.
We just call them.
No, that's very, very interesting. I mean, and it is seeming more and more as we literally dig deeper into our own past. For example, Göbekli Tepe. I mean, it's about what 2,000 or 3,000 years before the first society in Sumeria, supposedly, if not older than that.
Older.
Way older, probably. I think I'm off by like 10,000 years on that. But still, we have these sites that are growing, expanding our knowledge, and it seems like we had not only a more global society similar to what we have currently, like we're all aware of what's happening around the world currently, for the most part. But that was happening in the past. So something shifted, natural disaster, who knows what happened. And we not only knew about each other, but we have the same creatures all over the world. These so-called monsters, these so-called demons, these so-called entities. And you brought up the Ifrit before, and I want to show you a little clip of something. And I'll give credit to this person once I get his name up on the screen for myself. But let me show this real quick. So this is in England. And they caught this little guy. Now, you could say CGI. But and maybe it is. And it kind of looks like it because they miss a couple things. But I mean, that is essentially, this guy lives on this, man. He puts that out there, and I don't know, the movement looks realistic, but at the same time, a couple of things kind of make me go, I don't know, the shadowing's off and all that fun stuff. And, it puts things in the question, but to pick up on a little gray person about 1.5 feet tall reminds me of the Ifrit. So if that's even a replication of a creature that exists in England, of all places, we're in England's pretty close to the whole Irish thing with the Celtic and the Fae and all that fun stuff. So I don't know. I'm seeing a lot of interesting parallels throughout our history.
Well,
Again, even if it's
100%. And
replicated.
also, if you go into Native Americans, they talk about the little people.
Mhm.
And there are a whole bunch of different names that I'm not going to, I'd have to go to like 20 different tribes names for them. But basically, they would describe these small people who would mess with them. Sometimes they were friendly, sometimes they weren't. And sometimes these things would come in and like attack their tribes and, take away the food that they had made, and sometimes their kids too. So, I mean, when you think about the fact that, okay, these things exist all over the world, and then if you go into Central and South America, there's a ton of different things. I mean, everyone knows about a house duende. That's like not unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And it gets blamed for a lot, technically.
Yeah,
But
it does.
it also mimics what that is. And then, if you're in Ireland or in parts of Europe, you would call that, oh, those are the Fae.
Right.
And
Exactly.
or an
And I
elf.
want to add to that when you said little people in native lore, I think it's the Miwok. Oh gosh, I'm butchering it. Phil from Exploring with Phil would know. That's his bread and butter, but we're talking about a creature called the Pukwudgie. The
Yes.
Pukwudgie. And they are very well known for their mischief, but in that nation, in that tribe's ancient tellings, they weren't always. They were actually protectors to a degree and helped defend against giants that would assault their tribes, and they would fend them off. But then, uh, I think if the story goes, the son of one of the chiefs played a prank on the Pukwudgie and really kind of insulted it. This one particular Pukwudgie, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and wasn't much of a straw at all. And they just, it was mischief from that point forward. They let the giants stomp their fields and all that fun stuff, and the Pukwudgie became the bad guys, so to speak. But yeah,
Very temperamental.
not to be too vague, because the prank was pretty brutal. Because I think he actually managed to like kick him like a football, and they're little dudes like a foot and a half tall. Described.
Again,
That's how
we
they
go back to
described.
the abuse of things and then wonder why things don't like
Yeah,
us. Like,
exactly. So
well,
yeah,
maybe if
that
we
came
were,
back to bite us in the butt in the big bad way, or at
yeah.
least them.
So based on a lot of the overlap that I found, I just want to read you guys a couple things that I found in numerous stories. I'm happy to go into the stories if you want me to, but so one of the oldest, and I'm talking, this is even before Islam was a thing, like people were still nomadic tribes people. There is an ancient writing about, there was this lake or river that had loaded with fish, and that people wanted to go fish in it, but they couldn't because there was a Djinn who lived by there, and he wouldn't let you, basically. He wouldn't let humans go. So this man is really, really poor, his family's starving, and he decides, okay, I'm just going to go and ask for mercy and see what I can do. And so he goes down, and the Djinn basically is like, you know the rules, like, why are you here? The guy goes, what can I do for you that you would allow me to fish here? And the Djinn thinks a little and says, well, you have to tell me a story and you have to entertain me. And so the man says, okay, give me a day or two. And so what the man ends up doing is he goes back for a couple days and tells the Djinn a part of the story over and over, right? So like he draws it out, and then the Djinn will let him take a fish or two home every time. Okay, just let me take a couple fish and then I'll be back tomorrow and I'll tell you the rest. And then after the third or fourth day of this, he's pretty much at the end of the story and he's freaking out. Like, what do I do? Because I'm going to die if I don't entertain him. The Djinn basically tells him, don't end the story there and I'll let you come back. And so the man couldn't come back every day, but he basically barters with the Djinn of like, okay, if I entertain you. So it's interesting when you think about some of this lore and legends, right? Like there's a lot of the old stories where these deities or entities are like, well, entertain me. And we always think, like in our eyes, we're thinking, okay, you want me to tell you a story? Like that's really weird, but like cool, if I get my fish and my family's not gonna die, like awesome.
Right.
But it's interesting, right? Like that's one of the oldest stories that we have still on record about an interaction with them. So here's a couple more when I look at these stories from Djinn that also cross over into other things. You guys will understand why I'm saying other things. Big lore with children, whether it's coming and taking the children or enticing the children to leave with them. All of these things seem to have full family units and government and some sort of culture in their own kingdom, wherever that may be. It's still with us. It's just in another dimension of here. They all have stories about having you follow them to another place that is on top of ours, but looks nothing like ours, even though it does similarly look like ours, but there's differences. Like the buildings are different or the size of things are strange. Gifts and money from nowhere. I want you guys to think leprechaun lore, right? How the leprechauns could like pull coins out of the air. Well, there's a lot of that lore with Djinn as well, that the Djinn will actually, like, if you are in good cahoots with them, they can actually pull money and things out of the air and bring them to you. Now we're going to get into the funky ones. Lost time during interactions with them. And the last one, abductions, meaning people.
You're giving me flashbacks of 411.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so any questions or anything you guys want to add on that before I tell you this wild story?
Well, I was just going to say, as I just mentioned, what's that called? 411 something?
Missing 411?
Missing 411, right. I mean, a lot of those abduction stories, or missing person stories, excuse me, do mirror what you just said. And some of those who were missing and then came back, especially children, pretty much speak exactly to what you just said. Their recounting of what happened to them, as bizarre as it sounds, almost exactly mirrors what you just said. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to put that out there and put that in our audience's head and stuff. So go ahead, JJ.
Sammer, did you want to add anything?
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
So with all those stories that I went through and compiled, the thing that's interesting to me is all of these things, whether it's Djinn, Fae, little people, elemental spirits, they all cross over, right? Even sometimes with angels, but that's a whole different ball of wax. So there's this place, and it's called Batan Igul, and it's known as Belly of the Ghoul, right? Did I butcher that, Sammer? Did I do okay?
You did great.
All right, good.
Specifically, what's the geography? Where is that exactly?
It's actually in Jordan.
It's near Petra. It's in Wadi Rum.
Near Petra.
Where they shot The Martian, actually. It's around that area.
Oh, okay.
Wow, I did not know they wanted to film out there. That's interesting. Well, so this region in particular, history with it is basically, it was known forever as like belly of the devil, belly of the ghoul. And I want you to think about other places in the world that you know that are like called the Badlands, right? Or Devil's Canyon or things like that, right? It's like these places always get these really messed up names, but it's because there's messed up stuff that happens there.
Yeah.
So this area in particular, everyone kind of knew, stay away from it, stay out of it. And it's not even geographically that, I mean, it's somewhat difficult, but it's not that difficult to get modern workings of railroad and stuff through. But there was a railroad company in the past 100 years that tried several times to get a railroad to actually go through it. And everything that could go wrong would go wrong. So, I mean, the workers didn't even want to work there. They were having to ship people in actually from other countries to work it because the locals were like, yeah, no, you're not getting us to do that. Don't care how much money you're giving us. So they end up, you know, in modern times, they end up having some roads and stuff that go through that area. And in it, there's a man he lives near there and he's driving his car. And something happens with the car and he has to pull over, probably like put water in it or something like that, right? And he gets this very weird feeling. He feels almost like he's going to pass out. And then he smells something and he doesn't know how to describe it, but he said at first it smelled almost bad, but then it was the most beautiful smell he've ever smelled. And all of a sudden he's sitting in his car and he's kind of blinking because how did he get inside the car? And there's this beautiful big Djinn sitting in his car with him. And the Djinn basically tells him, like, there's stuff going on with somebody in your family. You're going to need to go back. Like, you're needed back home now. You don't need to go do this journey. And the guy's like, yeah, but I have to do this journey for work. Like, Djinn was like, no, you're needed with your family. They're going to have a hard time, like your brother-in-law specifically, and you're going to need to go now. Like, I need you to take heed. And he's like, okay, well, you know, hopefully I can turn around and get there in time. And the entire time he's saying he feels absolutely loved by this being. He feels taken care of. He feels safe. And, you know, here he is in the middle of nowhere talking to a supernatural being in his car. And he starts feeling very tired and he thinks, okay, well, when this being leaves, I'll just close my eyes a couple minutes and then I'll get on the road and on my way. And he falls asleep. Again, something that happens a lot in these stories. Everyone seems to fall asleep and opens his eyes, what he thinks is like 2 minutes later. And he's completely and utterly across the country near his brother-in-law. And his car odometer had not moved at all.
Oh, that's good. That's a good story.
So the reason I wanted to tell something like that is because here's this place, right? This awful, awful name. And, you know, people are scared to be there and Djinn are scary. And yet this man has this absolutely wonderful experience with this being. And he has total faith and trust that, like, I'm going to be okay. And okay, I don't really like what it's telling me I need to do, but like, I guess I'm going to do it. And it ends up being there for his brother-in-law who did a whole big thing happen. So like, he really did need to be there and got a free ride, ends up getting abducted with his car and taken to the other side of Jordan, which, I mean, it's not 50 miles, people, you know, like it's a, I think it was a 7-hour drive. Does that sound right, Summer?
Yeah, I mean, from the north tip of Jordan to Aqaba, which is the south tip, is probably a 7-8 hour drive. Jordan's very small, but nonetheless, that's a really nice story. And as I mentioned before, like, Djinn come in different kinds. You know, there's good Djinn, there's bad Djinn, there's evil Djinn. It just depends.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a cool story, though.
And there are awful ones, and trust me, like, I'm sure we all know stories and things of that, but I think part of reason why I wanted to talk about this so much is because I think it's important to understand that maybe not everything starts out evil. And if these things have homes and families and livelihoods like we do, just not within our dimension fully, I mean, could you not understand that maybe they would be upset by some of the treatment that we've treated them over the years?
Yeah, I
Probably
mean, if
so.
I got pulled
And
to an alternate dimension and enslaved, yeah, I'd be pretty ticked off. Just,
I think it goes both ways. We tick them off; they tick us off. A portal. Oh, there's two ways to a portal. It's a doorway to both dimensions or both realms. But yeah, you bring out a good point. So,
okay, so I'm gonna tell two stories, you guys.
it's
So
story
the
time
first
with
story,
JJ.
story time with JJ. So the first one was I was working with a person who their guides are Djinn. So they come actually from a line of Djinn. And when they work on the spiritual realm, that's who helps them. Are the
Okay,
Djinn.
I just wanted to look. I was just going to answer that clarification. That
Yeah.
she's a spiritual worker. Okay, go ahead.
So we were doing something together, and it required me going in and working with her guides in order to get this information, because they couldn't give it directly to her. So they had to I had to go in there and bypass. And so I go in, and I kind of know what to expect, right? There's like a special place that I go to, and then a couple of them show up, and then they have to guide me in to this other area where I talk to the other ones. And when I show up, they all freak out. And everyone instantly like backs away from me. And I'm like, okay, I'm sorry. Like, you knew I was coming. I had permission. We did everything the normal way, right? Where that I asked permission. We already have someone, from over there who knows that I'm going to show up. So I don't want to blitz surprise anybody. So everyone kind of freaks out. They back off me. They begrudgingly take me back where I'm supposed to go. And when I walk in, and they were all younger Djinn, by the way. And so I want to say like mid-30s and younger. And so when I get in, I meet the male, and then there's an ancient female. And I say that with love. Like, she's very spicy and sporty, but like she'd been around a good long while, right? And the male backs away from me a bit. Like he knows that I'm there. He gave me permission, but he doesn't want too much to do with me. And the older female Djinn comes up and she starts laughing. And I look at her and I'm like, I feel really bad. Like, everyone's freaking out. And she's like, oh, sweetie, don't worry. And I'm paraphrasing because we talk a different language. But basically, she's laughing and she's like, it's okay. They've only heard legends of things like you. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah, they've only heard lore. And so they're really scared. And I'm like, but I asked permission. Yeah. But like, they'll be okay. But the really interesting thing is it took her basically showing them, and like, she actually touched me, and her showing them like, she's okay, you're safe, it's going to be okay, for them to not freak out as much as they were freaking out. And that again shows, if we have legend and lore about these things in our society and culture, they have it in theirs.
Right.
And that also could be why there's a promulgation of some of them who don't like us, because all they've ever heard of us is that we're awful, or don't get near them, right? Because they're going to try to enslave you or ensnare you or put you in a jar or a bottle and like rub you once in a while.
Make a wish.
Yeah. So this other story, this is not my story. This is a friend of mine, although I get to interact.
Pause you right there, since you had personal experience. Can you tell me what a Djinn looked like, or what you perceived it as?
Yeah. So you have to remember that they will present in a way that you can kind of understand. Okay. I would say human-ish in the body frame.
Okay.
But the skin is a blue, and in this place, I can't tell if it's the lighting. It was like a blue-brown, like a really deep blue with a little bit of brown, but that also could have been the lighting because I was in a cave at sunset. And their skin to me looked very gnarled and almost wrinkly, but wrinkly as in think of somebody who's been in the sun constantly and they're now like 50 years old. Okay, like they kind of look leathery.
I was just going to say leather,
yeah.
What you said.
Yeah. The faces are similar-ish, but different. I could understand why some people might get a little scared of their faces. You know, I see so much weird stuff constantly that like it takes a lot to really upset me. So, and I pretty much accept everyone for that's, you know, you can't help what you look like, right? This is why I don't have my camera on, people. So
so never mind, she's a lovely woman.
Thank you. But their hair was
I'm sure she looks great, ladies and gentlemen. She just feels she does not present correctly right now, so
I'm over here gnarled. Their hair was interesting because the majority of their hair was black, like of the ones that I saw, but there were a couple where the hair was different. And I almost want to say it was like there was like a green sheen to it.
Okay.
Or you know the color that oil gets in the sun when it hits water?
Oh, so kind of rainbowy like, kind of shimmer to it?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And the hairlines were much different than ours. Much bigger foreheads.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Like Klingons or?
A little. Yeah. I didn't want to be mean, but yeah, a little bit, actually.
Hey, now we know where we got the idea of the Klingon. Okay. Gotcha.
A bit. Yeah, that makes sense. So this next story, like I said, this is my friends. They gave me full permission to use it. And there's actually a picture with it. So a friend of mine works at a fire station in the middle of absolutely nowhere on a reservation for a Native American reservation. It is mainly desert scrubland in that area. It is close to a couple Air Force bases as well. And so when they started working here, they had kind of heard the lore that this place was quote unquote haunted, and that there was weird stuff that always happened, which is actually where this picture comes from. Stuff would be moved, stuff would be thrown. And in the main bay, if you want to look at this picture, they actually caught these eyes in the window. And you can almost see the outline of a face looking down at them. Now, I want to remind you that this is a fire station. These are not small windows. This is a 3-story building. So those windows are 2-story in the air with no ledge. There's no balcony. There's no ledge. So it doesn't make sense for people to say, oh, it's a cat or it's an animal, because what is it standing on? There's no roof line there. There's nothing. It's just there. So apparently before this picture was taken, what was happening, why people even took this weird picture, is because in that, it's kind of like their gymnasium area, where they do a lot of their, packing up big ropes and all that stuff and climbing on things. And no disrespect to the firemen, I just don't know what to call what you guys do. So, but in that room, things were like these giant ropes and anchor belts were being thrown around the room, and there was nobody in there. And I do remember there being video of stuff that was being thrown. I just don't know where that video is. And my friend seems to think there is no video, which is a little difficult to understand, being that I remember it and I have not been there. So after he had a couple things happen where he was there, I would be on the phone with him and he would be sitting in the break room, and like a loaf of bread or like a muffin would go careening across the room into a coworker's head. So finally I said, okay, do you want me to jump over And this is before I had done the other work with the other friend with the Djinn family. And so I pop over and immediately, like, this thing goes running and hides under the stairs. And finally I go and I come over and I'm like, listen, I don't mean you any harm. I don't even know what you are. Like, can we just talk? Can you explain to me what you are, or like why you're here and what's your issue? And that's when I started calling him Frank. And Frank is a Djinn. Frank came over here with, unfortunately, some soldiers who picked him up and ended up back at the military base.
Let me see.
And
let me do that. Sorry.
He thanks for putting a post-it over it. But yeah, so Frank basically is here because he likes being alone, and he kind of just likes chilling in the desert by himself. There are times, and we've had a lot more interaction now. He actually has helped my friend when he's on duty there many times. There's times when he's woken him up before a call is going to come through that he's going to have to really be awake for. And one of the first things that I asked Frank is like, okay, you know, if you're going to help him, we want to give back. So like, what can we do for you? And his answer literally was, can he just leave me some water every once in a while? So now every time he goes to work, he leaves out a bottle of water. And what's really odd is the water ends up going missing, and it's not the other guys.
Let me see if I can get it tighter on Frank here. I've been trying to adjust. God, I almost see a dog, but I think that's that P word.
Pareidolia.
Thank you.
Well, that's interesting that you say a black dog, because some of the old lore is that the Djinn would actually show up as a big black dog.
Oh man, and that ties in a bunch of other lore.
Or a cat, yes, or a cat, which is also interesting when you go back into like witch lore with the, you know, like with the familiars, right? It's a black dog or a black cat that will show up. And that's usually like an intermediary between the spirit working with whoever the human is.
Oh my gosh, and that goes back to the ancient word daemon, which means exactly that. Oh, wow. Lots of connections here, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of connections. We'll make all kinds of connections. And is there anything else to add to this? Or can I take a station
not so
break?
much, other than, you know, Frank is a really nice man. And I think it just goes back to, you know, if you treat someone with respect, which I did when I went in there, and I try to do whenever I'm anywhere dealing with things. Right. You know, you don't know why he's there. We didn't know why he was there. We know that he definitely does not like two people who were working there. And what's really interesting is one of the people that Frank really disliked in this station. I mean, Frank would like lob stuff at his head. Not going to hurt him, but you know, a muffin bouncing off your head isn't going to hurt you, but it's enough that it'll make the guy think twice. We ended up finding out that this guy was really abusive to his family at home. And finally he ended up getting popped, not only for the abuse, but for something else. And it was almost like Frank was giving them a heads up. Like, there's a reason I don't like this guy. And I don't know. For me, I just found that really nice. Like, he's trying to give people a heads up. This guy isn't nice.
And it goes to what Amber said. There are various types of these individuals. Some are good, some are bad. So, Frank's a good one. That's great. And it's like with us, too. Some of us are great. Some of us are not so much.
Yeah, and some of us, honestly, it just depends on the time when you meet us. I mean, I've run into Frank when he's in a mood and he's, you know, we don't necessarily want to chat too much. Like, he's still semi-nice to me, but, like, he definitely tells me, like, I don't want to chat right now. Leave me alone. Definitely likes under the stairs for whatever reason. But, you know, Tim, we've also had a case where we did have a Djinn that wasn't so kind. And, you know, that went a whole different direction.
Yeah, it did. Yes, it did. And on that fun note, we're going to take a short station identification. This will take about 15 seconds. We'll be back in a little bit. This is the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans and 105.3 in the Gulf Coast. UPRN talkradio.com. Esoteric programming at its finest. And we're back. This is the UPRN. My name is Tim Sudano. This is Paranormal Insight, and we're talking about Djinn and other creatures of folklore that are becoming more and more creatures of history and even present day ongoing history. I mean, Frank, our new favorite Djinn, resides in a firehouse somewhere, and JJ Rose has interacted with this thing. I'll pull up the picture real quick one more time just so we have it up there with my silly little post-it that I accidentally created. But there's Frank, his glowing eyes, and my pareidolia, and I'll outline, if you can see the cursor, I'll outline with the, actually I'll use the pen, why not? If I can make it work, which it's not, never mind. No, that's not working at all. Okay, but I see a little dog here. I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but I see a dog head, and the Djinn is sometimes reported to be dog-like and or cat-like or familiar-like. This kind of goes into early witchcraft, as you mentioned. JJ, would you be able to talk about that a little bit? Are we dealing with individuals like a Djinn who are, as the old daemon definition states, is living between these two different worlds, these two different dimensions even?
Are we like, what do you mean?
I'm sorry, are we dealing with Djinn? I mean, witches have familiars in the old tales. I don't know if that's still a thing modern day witches ascribe to, but
I think it depends, but it's not completely out of the ruling. I mean, because again, one person's going to call them Djinn, depending on their culture and where they live. Mm-hmm. Someone else is going to call them an elemental. Someone else is going to call them a this or a that.
Right.
And it all depends, right? And then you get into the technicalities of what kind of witchcraft are you actually working and what are you calling in or trying to work with. But from what I'm seeing from the various reports is like, they definitely are a lot more present and showing up in our lives in ways that are a lot more prolific than people might realize. There's the Navajo Ranger. His name is Stanley. He wrote a book recently. Yeah. And he was on a couple shows as well that we watched. Unsolved Mysteries did one about the Navajo Rangers. And if you remember, there was a time in there where he kept getting these pennies appearing from out of nowhere.
Right. I do remember that story.
Yeah. So it's interesting because that is also something that the Djinn are also known for, of pulling money out of absolutely nowhere. So here's this man who thinks he's dealing with like some sort of native spirit. And yet in reality, it meets all the same criteria as someone who has a Djinn haunting them or around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is intriguing. I want to get into the word that we're using, Djinn, and maybe Sam or JJ, both, either of you can speak to the origins of that word. Is this a piece of a larger word that got shortened? I don't know. That's why I'm asking.
That is actually a very, very good question. It is an Arabic word, and it does go back to the Islamic tradition. However, where the word is from, I am not sure. That is a good question, though. But it's definitely Arabic, and it deals with it's Jinn or the Djinn, alternatively genies, of course. But that's a good question. I don't know.
Interesting. It apparently has. It started in Islamic history. I mean, almost it's like that's that weird creature. Here's the name for it.
Right,
So I
right.
mean, it didn't even. It does. There's no from what I'm seeing on the internet right now. There is basically no origin. It is Jinn, and this only
Well, I mean,
differentiates, but from here to
like
here, from here to there.
The Arabic word, so jinn is derived from the word majnoon. Majnoon means crazy, you know. And I think majnoon is a Persian word or an Aramaic word. Now remember, Aramaic is before Arabic. Actually, Arabic is from Aramaic and other. Yeah, it's a mixed.
A lot of
It's a,
languages derive from Aramaic. Yeah, that's amazing.
Mhm. Exactly. So it could be, it could have. I mean, it definitely has Semitic roots. Semitism not necessarily only means Judaism or Jews. Semitism encompasses all the 12 or 14 tribes that lived in Arabia and what we call now Middle East, Levant and whatnot, and goes all the way up to Syria. So this is including Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine or Israel, Sinai Peninsula, Syria, and I think Oman and Yemen. So all that
Wow.
are Semitic tribes, and they all intermingled with each other and shared culture, and of course, shared language. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, and also
So what
remember
was
that.
I was going to ask one more time to repeat the word that means crazy. That's the
Majnoon.
Majnu. Okay.
Majnoon.
Interesting.
I know, yeah.
That's very cool. I'm sorry,
Well,
JJ. Please continue.
yeah, and so for historical understanding, before there was organized religion, people basically lived in kind of tribes, right? And a lot of them were nomadic because there was a lot going on in the world. Huh?
Yeah, they still do. They still live in tribes.
Yeah. And so what was interesting is when you look at the Middle East itself and where a lot of this language came from, especially the area that it derived from, it came from by Babylon. And if you guys will remember the story with the Tower of Babylon, where everybody spoke the same language. And then something happened and everyone broke up and no one could understand each other anymore. We all started speaking different languages. So again, if you look at this from not just from the religious texts of how they say in time-wise, but if you go back further, when we were a global civilization and people had telepathy and people were able, technology-wise as well, to contact from all over the world, it would make sense that we were all speaking the same. We wouldn't need different languages until everything got disrupted and then we split apart. But what's interesting is, so genie is in Arabic mythology, it's deemed as a spirit inhabiting the earth but unseen by humans, capable of assuming various forms and exercising extraordinary powers. And the belief was common in pre-Islamic Arabia that they were thought to inspire poets and writers, just like the daemons in Greek and Roman. And
Muses
then
in Greek, yeah.
Yes,
In ancient Greece.
same thing.
Yeah.
And then
Roman.
in the Judeo-Islamic culture, shadem became the word for jinn because it was the only word that could convey the morally ambivalent attitude of the beings. So once again, we go back to they don't necessarily think like us, right? And I mean, I went so far as to read the books of the Quran, and I'm not going to butcher those, but there is definitely one part in specific in the Book of the Jinn, verses 19 through 22, that I advise everyone familiarize themselves with it. And it took me a while in order to find one that was coherent in English that explained, because as we've talked about before, Summer, with the Quran, with the Torah, in order to really understand, even with the Bible, you really have to know biblical history or that religion's history in order to understand why the text was written the way that it was. But what I found so interesting is it talks about where Muhammad, peace be upon him, invokes Allah. And what's interesting is all Abrahamic religions all discuss their God, but they also reference other ones. And in that book, it specifically talks about that the jinn gather around to watch when Muhammad, peace be upon him, is doing that. Because, and I'm wondering, were they interested, or were they interested because they were wondering, is this guy going to pull this off, or is he going to explode? Because literally in the text, it says that he is invoking him. And it also goes a little further and talks about how they understand that these people now accept Allah, but they don't accept the other ones. Well, who are the other ones?
Well, if you go back to Sumerian mythology, Yahweh or El goes Yahweh, God, Allah, Hashem. They're all the same deity, which is God. And it goes back to Sumerian, the gods of Sumeria. And if they're rejecting those other gods, and they chose to stay with El, who was the god of fertility, and he had other superpowers. I forget. So that could be what you're talking about. But I think, from what I remember in Quran school, there's Bible school, that Muhammad, peace upon him, when he took the unicorn and took off to see God or Yahweh or Allah, he was met with jinn, and Muhammad asked God, who are these creatures? Like, he knew what they are, but he'd never seen one before. And God explained.
Gotcha.
And I think that was the time when he made a contract with God. He's like, could you please not show these beings among my people? And his people, of course, are human beings. That's what I remember from the school. Yeah, from what I was taught.
Which is interesting, because that is in other lore as well, and in other stories outside of major religions, that there is some person, right, from the tribe or the area, and that person basically gets nominated, like, I'm going to be a righteous, good person, and ends up conversing with a big deity, right? And basically saying, like, yep, we're going to follow you. And then they end up kind of making these deals of, like, will you protect us from the whatever the names are, right? Or make them separate from us. Even into old Germanic lore as well, it talks about some of this. And the reason I bring this up is because, in my opinion, the God of the Old Testament of the Christian Bible is, and in the Torah, is not, to me, the same that I would say is the all-encompassing divine creator of all of us. That's specific.
Very interesting. There's a lot of stuff coming out right now. A lot of people who were, did a little bit of reading, whatever, translating of old texts and what have you, that are saying the exact same thing. That those who said, if you want to go back to the Anunnaki, for example, they were proclaiming them. They were either believed to be or self-proclaiming to be gods themselves or God.
Yeah.
And the reality is, no. There is a greater creative force, well above these beings. That's the overall takeaway.
That's a good point. Go ahead, continue.
That for me, because when you read about the differences in how these ancient people worshipped their god, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't feel to me the same reverence you would have for that which created everything. It feels more one-on-one, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And it just, I don't know how to describe it. It feels different. And then it feels like in the past couple hundred years, we've kind of, in order to answer these questions that people had that weren't allowed to ask, there seems to be this, God is just the same God across the board and it created everything. So therefore, don't ask any questions. But that to me leaves more questions, right? Because if you read the Old Text, there's some questions involved. Furthermore, if it's saying, hey, I'm contracting to work with this deity, right, that I'm now going to call my God, but then it references, but I'm only working with him, not any of these other ones that are hanging around. Okay, yeah, then you're directly referencing the fact that there are other ones, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, in ancient, and I mean ancient, a pre-biblical Christianity, because there was such a thing, there were 5 deities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that were worshipped.
Yahweh was originally a storm god, and he was the lesser of, there were 13, and he was the only one that ended up not getting any land to rule and people to rule. And he got very upset about that and went on this Loki-esque type warpath to manipulate, and basically ended up ousting all of the other ones. And then there are theories that Loki is actually the god of the Old Testament. Yeah, that's a wild road to go down one day.
Dude. Well, you're echoing Anunnaki legend, you're echoing Norse legend, you're echoing a lot of stuff. And the story you told about Muhammad rising up, the unicorn, seeing the Djinn, that echoes part the story of Enoch.
Yes. And also,
I mean, not exactly, but a lot of those elements are the same. So,
but also when Enoch goes up, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To go see quote unquote God, he starts seeing these beings. And remember, he said their faces are like 4 different animals combined.
Yeah.
And he couldn't describe them.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing that you're describing with Muhammad, that you're thinking, okay, you're suddenly seeing these beings that you don't know what they are.
Right. Yes.
Interesting.
And I think that's truly where the mesh is happening.
Yeah.
I mean,
and just for the record, I was wrong. It wasn't the unicorn, Tim. It was the Pegasus that he wrote.
Oh gosh! And now you're talking Greek mythology. Oh my gosh!
Mm-hmm. We're just crossing all borders,
dude. I mean, my paranormal M theory is and some call it the unity theory. I came to find out later, but I think mine's a little different than that. But it is and it isn't. But the parallels and the crossover across the spectrum of our combined past as humans is decidedly very, very, very similar, if not a lift. And it's like the story got told, I saw this, and then a telephone game happened and they got a couple of details off and they said, well, I saw this, but it was happening in various cultures across the globe. It just, the message got a little decayed as it went down the line before we actually started writing things down. And
even in Greek mythology, there's a mortal who rode a Pegasus to go slay the Chimera. Well, what would the chimera be? They would look like a mixture of different animals.
Exactly. Right.
And a lot of lore with the Djinn is that they look like a mixture of different animals and humans combined.
Well, now we're going to step into a little bit of not only Somalian, Solomon's territory, but and I talked with Sam about this last time he was on, but Greek mythology as well. While Solomon had control of the jinn or the demons or whatever it is you want, these other people, these other entities, he pulls one aside and says, I only see dudes here. Do you guys have females where you're from? I said, yeah, well, yeah. Let me pull one through. So pulls a female through. And the upper portion of this female was human looking-ish, but the bottom portion looked like, well, they described the lower portion as looking like a donkey. Hind legs, the tail, the whole thing. And that sounds like a Pan from Greek mythology or a satyr.
Yes. And there are also reports of a beautiful woman in the desert who offers to help. Yes. Mm-hmm. And then the men go back. She feeds them. She's, they sleep and they wake up in the middle of the night and she's nursing 9 children on her teats.
Yes. In Native American culture, a couple of different tribes, there's the deer woman. Exact same thing.
Yep.
Female, upper half, deer body on the bottom, hooves and the whole thing.
Well, and some of the things that I've seen.
We're talking opposite sides of the globe at roughly the same time. Yeah.
Well, and then look at ancient Egyptian, look at ancient Aztec and Mayan. All of them have these half animal, half human hybrid beings. Mm-hmm. And then, even with some of the things that I've seen, I look at them, and the best way to describe it is I could understand why people would say, oh, they had multiple faces of different animals, because they phase in and out of reality so quick that you're literally seeing different things come through, like they're trying to pick which one they're going to present as. And it's very hard
which one works.
Right, because our time and their time are different. When you go to another dimension, it's very disorienting because time doesn't work the same. And when you see them in our time, they do look like they're moving really, really fast, which is why that video of that Pukwudgie thing to me looked fake, because it's not moving fast enough.
Right. And that was apparently a very specific tribe of pixie, according to that guy. I can't.
And I'm not negating it. I'm just saying. To me, it didn't look like it was moving fast enough. And everything that I've seen, they always move different. I don't know how to describe that 100. I could draw it for you, but
no, it's okay. I'm pretty clear what you're saying.
Yeah, you've seen it. It's glitchy, is the best way to put it. Yeah. And
kind of like the Flash.
All of this is so fascinating. So a couple weeks ago, I ended up going to this. It's like a festival, and a lot of it is to honor like Native American and Native Central and South American roots. And so I'm walking up, and I end up. You know my love of Anubis from Egypt, like. That's my heart right there. So my first crush too. I'm not a normal child. So
with your jackal head.
Still love him. So I end up seeing this shirt, and it looks like Anubis, right? But it's got like the Mayan step pyramid behind it. I'm like, I don't care. I want this shirt. So I'm talking to the guy, and we're having a whole conversation. And I go, okay, so this is Anubis. And he's like, no. And I'm like, yes, dude, like that's Anubis. And he's like, no, this is Ahuatl. And I'm like, interesting. So I was like, well, what does that god do? And he's like, oh, he's kind of described as like the god of the dead. That's the same as Anubis. So ancient Aztec and ancient Aztecs and sorry, ancient Aztecs and
I know.
ancient Egyptians. My bad. The same god doing the same thing with the name super similar. Come on, man.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you. I don't know, that Billy Carson's is starting to make more and more sense, and I took him with a grain of salt. I'll tell you what. But it is fascinating, kind of perplexing, and at the same time super exciting to see all these pieces of this ancient puzzle really kind of coming together and more or less defining ourselves as, our human experience, our combined human experience, and what it is we're looking at. And now we're finding out more and more about this alternate dimension stuff and how it's kind of real. And it's being proposed and not, as being more tangible than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like we are on the verge of just about creating or having access to these different dimensions. I'm not sure that's the best idea for us. I don't think we're technically quite prepared for something like that, but it may happen whether we want it or not. I mean, whether it's powers on this side or powers on the other side that say, here we come, you kind of have to go, well, I guess we better just get ready, get prepared, and let's talk a little bit about that. What are we to? What should we do? Are we ready? And if we're not, how do we get ready? And if we are ready, what's coming through that door, that portal?
I feel like I've been talking nonstop about this for 3 years straight. It's the whole reason I decided to get a YouTube channel. But, in my opinion, it is pick a lane, decide what kind of person you want to be, right? Do you want to do good in the world, or do you want to be only in this for yourself? And then from there, figure out like who are your people and be that kind of a person, whether that's a spiritual development or religion, whether that is just you doing things that suit yourself and whatever path you've taken, ride that course. But the reason I say start there is because that is how you are emanating out into the world. That is your choice. If you want to be a nice, good person and do good for the world, then you're going to start small with yourself and things around you. Whether it's you leave a little seed or bread out for the birds, right? You're doing something for someone other than yourself that you don't benefit from. This isn't a matter of you make a YouTube video showing that you gave a homeless guy $10. This is a matter of a small unseen gesture for someone or something that in no way whatsoever is going to do anything for you other than maybe make a lot of noise and wake you up in the morning, right? And just start there and right. Start doing good things in the world and beef up on your spiritual protections. Know who you are. Know how to protect yourself spiritually, physically, and mentally, emotionally, and physically. Get yourself in a strong position. If something small, like seeing an entity or a djinn walk out of your closet is going to freak you out and you're going to have major issues, then you might want to start bucking up.
Yeah. So
that you're not going to get so rocked.
Okay. No, that's fantastic advice. You spoke to one's position in the world, or even in your neighborhood, in your own home, who knows? But you reminded me rather of something that's happened in the larger, if you want to go this, if you take what I'm about to tell you to any sort of to heart at all, you may be aware of the Galactic Alliance. This is a series of alien creatures out there that we are purportedly interacting with at the higher echelons of most governments, most of the more powerful governments on our little planet here. And they also have that philosophy. There is service to self and there is service to others. And that is the median. That is the line. If you're a selfish piece of crap, they don't want anything to do with you. But if you want to serve and help others and be of help, of service, they want you on board. I just found that when you said that, that's exactly what popped into my head. So I don't know. We're dealing with things, and then we can also talk about the whole alien thing. Where and JJ and I have talked about this before. That the perception that aliens are demons. We're kind of talking about the same thing, the same concept or misconception, I guess. Because I don't think that's the case.
Looking up and off planet for these things. They've been here the entire time before us. Mm-hmm. So you guys want to talk about a galactic federation? It's right here. It's happening on this planet. It's just all the beings that we're not interacting and talking to, and we think they're off planet. They're not. They're here, and they're not alien. We're the aliens. There's my lecture. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Drop the mic, off she goes.
I think, Tim, you're talking about the ancient astronaut theory where everything we talked about.
That is part of it, yes. That is part of it. But there's a modern portion of that I'll name a name. Elena Danaan. She's very well known in the modern circle of of modern alien stuff. She's an abductee, and JJ doesn't like her. She's a French archaeologist, interestingly. But
I don't know her. It's not that I don't like her. I just am a bit.
Right.
I'm not on board like everyone else.
Not on board, but she still ascribes to this. Whether you believe it or not, she's in contact with these aliens because of a chip implant that went haywire during an abduction. But it's still largely that's the general message that these galactic beings that are out there on different planets or here, as JJ points out, and a lot of government officials across various governments have said the exact same thing. It's like they've been here forever. We just didn't tell everyone. So I don't know, but in general, that's the thing. You're in service to self. You're the good guy. If you're selfish, you're the bad guy. That kind of lends to the human experience. In isolation, if you want to just draw it down to us. I had a really good point to put on the end of that, but I forgot the button. So.
Sammer, what do you think we need to do to prepare?
That is a really good question. If you guys are mentioning some intergalactic alien / demon invasion, I mean, how do you prepare? How do you prepare for vampires coming to your home? You just know what you know and you prepare for it. I don't believe we are threatened or there's a threat there, but that's just me. If hypothetically, let's say there is an intergalactic a species that are way more advanced in their civilization, like let's say their civilization is 1 million years old, and they tapped into distant teleportation, etc., and they are here for, let's say, water, because they're running out of water. This is just a hypothetical, simple scenario. How do we prepare for that? I mean, I can't prepare for it. Our government is going to prepare for it. They're the one communicating with them. Whatever I say, I don't think it's going to be put on a vote ballot, so there's no voting for this. But that's a lofty question. The answer is going to be as lofty as the question. I don't know. I really don't know.
Gotcha. I myself have been doing as much introspection. Gosh, I cannot talk today. introspection as I can of late. And I'd like to think if this show at all says anything about me as an individual, I do think of myself as a person who prefers to serve others and be of help. I mean, that's the ultimate goal of this show, and not only of the show, but of Scary, the outfit JJ and I work with.
But when you say to serve,
oh my God, I can't talk.
What do you mean to serve? Tim, what do you mean to serve? You're explaining like.
Do you want a coffee? No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing.
To help others.
To just basically, that person falls over, helping them stand up. If that other person is struggling with their groceries, take a bag out of their hand. I mean, simple. That's a really simplistic example, but you could take that to the higher levels as you go on. Don't be the guy who stands there with your cell phone in your hand. Be the guy that's helping, or be the girl that's helping. Be the person that's helping.
All aspects of helping then. Okay, I see.
Yes. To say service doesn't mean I'm going to bow and scrape to the person in front of me. To be of service means I'm going to help. And be the individual who's going to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Right. Which I respect that. I mean, we all should be like that, have that motto in our blood, really, to help others. But how is this going to help us with an alien invasion? Or it has nothing to do with
I would submit that if this is going to happen, and we are going to get in a lot, including JJ, she and a lot of others, or far more in the know, at least on the spiritual level, and still others who are in the know on the more with the rest of us normies. I don't think an invasion is going to happen. If a true invasion was going to happen, I would think it would have happened already. And I'm of the point of view that it would be it won't be an invasion. It'll just be, to borrow from, I can't even remember the source, but the flying saucer landing on the lawn of the White House, and the aliens step out and say, "I come in peace," and there we go. Our world perspective has just changed radically with that one simple move, and we have to adjust and adapt. And if you're on the other side of that, if you're the one coming to another culture that is in trouble, and you genuinely have the perspective that you want to help, you also want to find others in that culture who are of a similar mind. You want people who also want to help, because go ahead.
I agree. It's very unethical to assume that these two cultures that are fighting need your help at all. So if you find first of all, to be introduced to a new culture and to cover your person in a way that you're not shunned upon, is to understand that culture. You can't just go to a culture and try to do whatever the fuck you want. Oops, sorry. Try to do what you want, but
we'll figure a way to bleep that later.
Bleep. But two cultures that are fighting or are in decay, whether it's from decadence or war, who are you to intervene? You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. I think, like I said, if you're going to be that outsider that's coming in, I would think, and our ancients have kind of nudged this into our subconscious, that if you need to be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. So you need to be able to step in and say, I can bring this to you, I can bring that to you, and and there were probably some weird exchange. It's not like that Twilight Zone where I feel it's not like that Twilight Zone, I should say, where, you know, the aliens land and they say, we're going to help you. Here's, you know, here's all these gifts. But we're going to take a few of you with us, and here's the book that tells, you know, but and when they finally decipher the book, they find out it's a cookbook. So I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. But, so I think it would be a true, I would like to think anyway, that it would be closer to, and I'm good, please don't sue me, Paramount, to Star Trek.
Yeah,
When
actually,
we had that movie where they go back in time and the Vulcans land at the end. Spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the flick already. But, you know, the Vulcans land and it's like, you know, we saw you had hit this one plateau, and that's kind of our invitation to say welcome to the rest of the galaxy. And, you know, he reached his hand out and they shook hands, and the Federation was pretty much born that night. Again, don't sue me, but and I think that's what I want to happen. That's what I think is going to happen. Because, like I said, if there is a society out there that even a federation or an alliance of whatever is out there, and they have that kind of technology, and some of our Sumerian tablets even speak to that. You know, that was 5,000 plus years ago. Having that level of technology, I mean, you know, yeah, that's, you know what? I don't like the look of that island. And there goes the whole planet, you know. So if they have that power, why wouldn't they have exercised it already? I think they would have. Because I don't think we take much. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. If it's true to know, but let's go back to mythology, for example. You're talking about.
Can I pause you right there? I'm so sorry. JJ, you have to leave. Is that correct?
I do. I'm so sorry, but I love you guys.
That's okay. Well, say goodbye to everyone, and why don't you give me your, and I can't find it all of a sudden. Oh, wait. It won't let me put it up there.
Serial number?
Well, I was going to say give them your YouTube or something.
My name's JJ Rose 777 across the board. YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You could find me on my link tree as well if you want to get in touch. I have a lovely free YouTube channel. I'm not monetized. Sorry about the commercials. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks for seeing
thank you
and chatting about everything. Sammer, you know I adore you. Thank you so much. Good seeing you guys.
Good seeing you too. Take it easy.
Bye, JJ.
And it's just us.
And it's just, I mean, you can cut whenever you want to cut. You know.
Well, I have to fill 2 hours, so we have about a half hour.
Okay. What were we talking about?
Well, I just finished pretty much plagiarizing, but borrowing from Star Trek about scenarios.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that's, we don't know. Like
it's true. We don't.
Science. We don't. The Earth, we claim it's 14. No, the universe is 14 billion years old. Earth supposedly is 4 point something billion years old. 4 billion years old. That's, you know, a long time. Civilization on Earth is probably, let's go with archaeological record. Yeah, according to our archaeological record, civilization started with agriculture. So let's stick to that. I know Göbekli Tepe is 12,000 years old. We don't know much about it yet. You know, we're still, you know, digging and excavating and deducing and inducing. But civilization is what, 5,000-6,000 years old now.
Probably close to the 10, I think. If you're talking cultivating rows and stuff like that, I'd say close to the 10.
Cultivation of agriculture and domestication of animals. That's basically, I mean, I know hunter-gatherer back then, 15, 30 years, 1,000 years ago, domesticated wolves, that's true, but domesticating of cattle and domestication of corn and all that, maybe from, you know what, let's say it's 20,000 years old. Let's get away from the, let's say it's 20,000 years old. Well, what's 20,000 years in comparison to 4 billion years? That's
point in the bucket.
Exactly, not in a drop in the ocean, you know. So if there is an Earth the same age as ours, that's 4 billion years old, and there just happenstance to be, it's in the Goldilocks zone. There's life, and all of a sudden you have a civilization that's also that old. You know what? Not even 4 billion years old. Let's make it a civilization that's 500 or 1 million years old. Well, that's still a long, long time, and it's longer than our civilization. So they would have the technologies. I'm sure they tapped into everything. So basically what I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, the probabilities are there when you imagine it, you know. Put it on paper or just to prove it is probably very hard. But it's not really far-fetched because the universe is big, man.
Well, it's not far-fetched at all. I mean, we're not even the oldest galaxy out in the universe. I mean, and if that's the case, I mean, and we're not even the oldest star in our galaxy. You know, our star is not the oldest in the galaxy by far. Never mind with stellar nurseries still spinning in the arms of our galaxy, spitting out new stars every day.
Agreed.
So it's amazing. I love
it. It is. And then again, you have physics, talks about dimensions, talks about realms. You know, there's 11 dimensions apparently according to physics, and that's
according to a lot of mostly. There's some physics involved in it now, but even back in the day when it was more mystics and stuff like that, they kind of landed around 11. So yeah.
So still, that's something to consider. And tapping into time travel, and long distance, light year travel. You know, it's all those. I mean, there's
there's that funnel at around our star that shows up every 8 minutes, and apparently they tracked it to another star, a nearby star, and apparently that's a network throughout.
Wow,
that's the theory anyway. So I mean, that could, if we're dealing with extraterrestrials and all that, and they're using vehicles, that would answer the light speed question. There would be a conduit that they could tap into every 8 minutes. Who knows how fast that thing will go. And you're also dealing with another mythology, a very popular mythology called Star Wars, where they use hyperspace lanes, basically, and it hops between stars and such. So
what is it called? A hyperjump? I think they're called hyperjump.
A hyperjump, yeah. Hyperspace, yeah. Good times. Versus Star Trek's warp drive, which is they create their own tunneling, tunnel.
That's true. That is true. Yeah. They create their own through a magnetic field or magnetic propulsion kind of thing.
Something like gravimetric, but it starts with magnetics, and it's like, in fact, someone came up with the theory. They put a mathematical formula to it, and they actually theorized a ship that could achieve it. And basically, there's the cockpit, but it's surrounded by a ring. And what you do is you disrupt space-time behind you, and space-time has a very specific way it wants to sit. So if you disrupt it, and you imbalance the field, if this is where my mouth is, where the thing is, if you imbalance the field and weaken the front and mess up the back, it'll spit you out like a watermelon seed, and then you apply the reverse effect in order to slow down.
Dude, it sounds. What was it? What I think the Manhattan Project, or is it the Philadelphia Project? No, it's probably the
Philadelphia's
Manhattan
project dealt with teleportation. Yeah.
I think it's the Philadelphia Project. Yeah, that's so interesting.
And Tesla is apparently a part of that, which is cool.
Tesla, as in like Elon Musk
Nikola.
Tesla, or Tesla? Oh,
Nikolai
like
Tesla. Yeah.
The prodigy. Yeah. Not this dude. Yeah.
Man, that guy was amazing. And they're just now in the 369 thing. They're just now starting to figure out. Oh, that's what.
Oh no way! He always worked in threes. That's so true. He always worked
369, 369. That was a stack, you know.
And
remember those numbers.
Mm-hmm. And he looked at it more in a mathematical way, but I think his intuition was always. If you look at his, this is weird. I'm going to mention this. He had a big head, by the way. He had a big
brain on that guy. Yeah.
A brain on that guy. And I think that's why he was able to have all these superpowers, you know. Among them is just like picturing a motor and just like each. I can't really explain his prodigal approaches.
He could put things in three-dimensional order, rotated in his head without the use of a computer. Basically, it was a CAD system in his own mind.
Totally.
And he could build things that way. I mean, oh man, I'd love to have that kind of ability. I do to some degree, but I mean, not to his level, not at all. But it's amazing. How did we get from Djinn to that?
I don't know. Anyway,
as is the case on this show, we often leave our main subject kind of askew. We'll get back to it though.
All right.
It's
you got 145.
But it's public coverage for my show, so don't worry about it. Say again.
You got 145 minutes. Should we stay?
Yeah. That'd be. I'm sorry.
I could stay. I could stay. That's fine.
Excellent. I appreciate that.
Otherwise,
it's just me blabbing for 15 more minutes.
So it has to be 2 hours.
It has to be. That's my slot. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Interesting stuff. Yeah.
You know, you
could cut it short, but there's going to be a lot of dead air.
Well, you could put footage of things.
It's not my show, not my channel. I mean, I just provide a show on that channel. If it were a matter of controlling the output, I'd be a different story. But I don't. I'm just a cog in this wonderful machine.
Understood. Okay, we got about 15 minutes. What do you want to talk about?
Well, let's go back to Djinn real quick. I want to share something that is not a Djinn, despite the claims in the video. And let's just take a quick look at that. So, we have people around a campfire, and there's this luminescent thing dancing around. There's a little arrow pointing to it. But if you know anything about filmmaking, camera work at all, I'll hit play again so I can toy with the, what's it here? Okay, so I paused it. That's not the best image. There it is. That's a good image. Okay, so what you're looking at there is not a ghost or any sort of spirit manifestation. That is lens reflection. That is lens flare from the fireplace, from the fire pit, rather. So, not a Djinn. And in this video, they distinctly claim that is a Djinn. Look at it. No, it's lens reflection.
It's not. I don't think you could capture a Djinn through camera. Remember, they're not ghosts. They're not apparitions. Yeah, they're not.
If they're not apparitions and they step into this room, you should be able to take a picture of them, right?
Yeah, that's different. If they step into this realm, they show who they are. Whether, as I said, they shape shift into either cat, dog, dyslexic.
Shaped. Yeah, I know what you mean. So does the audience.
Shape shift. Shapeshift into whether it could be anything. It could be a cockroach.
Yeah.
It could be a mosquito. It could be. It could be anything. If they come into this realm like that, you could take a picture of that. I think, but for them to be in their full form, I don't know. Like if they come in full looking like me, but just fire like the Human Torch.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's very interesting. Let's touch on the whole smokeless fire thing. I've seen a couple other videos, and I actually tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. Where these, I guess they were my counterparts in Saudi Arabia, maybe I'm not sure, but they're near some old ruins in that somewhere out in the desert, and they're kind of like ghost hunters to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And they're out there hunting a spirit of some sort or another. And suddenly, these little fires pop up everywhere, like randomly. And one guy gets his pants lit on fire. And he's dancing around trying to put it out, and it's crawling up his crotch, and it's horrible. I wouldn't want to be in it at all. Because if it was a piece of pyrotechnics and they're just putting on a show, it got out of hand really quick, in a big bad way. But it's fascinating to see that, and then we have. So there's smokeless fire right there, and I didn't see any smoke coming off of the fire to be clear, but then there's pretty much what JJ reported, and then there's also what Solomon reported. That there are these creatures that are quasi-animalistic, kind of leathery, I can't talk today either, leathery skin to them, semi-animalistic look, maybe not unlike the Avatar people, they kind of look like cats.
Right.
Big blue cats. But in fact, I think that's where you lifted the whole Avatar look is from the Djinn stories. But that's a guess on mine. That's a guess. But I think it's a pretty educated guess. But semi-animalistic blue skin. I'm just making connections. But we're in those instances, nobody was on fire. Where did the fire thing come from? That's my next question. Perhaps something too.
The fire thing. Ever since I remember talking about Djinn with anyone, and when I was living in Jordan, they always mentioned smokeless fire, and I think that comes from the Quran.
Okay.
There's a bunch of hadiths that mention that too, what the Djinn are, or the book I have, which I've read, talks about the same thing. They're made out of fire. So the Quran does mention that what they're made out of, we're made out of mud and clay, right? According to the Bible.
Okay.
They're made out of fire, Now, I believe that's where the idea, or that's where it came from. What we know about Djinn came from. So it's from the Quran and Old Testament. Now, my question is, who has, like you just explained an experience you saw? That's never happened to me. I've never spoken to anyone, even though the sheikhs who exercise, like they do exorcism and they exorcise the demons from children or whatever. They never once mentioned anything about fire, ever.
So that's really fascinating to me. Then
it is very interesting. It is very interesting. But then again, I mean, I don't know. It's funny. I said that today probably 10 times. I don't know, because in the long run, I really don't know. As much as an expert I could be, everything I know is not through experience. It's through literature and books and history that I've read. So
I mean, literature goes a long way. I mean, that's a lot of words and tales and the rest of it handed down and finally put to ink at one point. And so there is that's always helpful because we have at least a baseline, a reference somewhere. But what we don't have is the reason. And I guess that, how are we made of mud and earth? I get it, the whole Garden of Eden thing, we're crafted. Not, which is weird. I mean, it just hit me that is also how you craft a golem. According to Jewish tradition, you make it out of mud and you put a special symbol on its head.
Well, it's funny if go keep going.
Go ahead. No, I'm done. Go ahead.
It's funny if you think about it, because like the Quran, the Bible mentions like we're made out of mud or clay, and if you look at the elements of what's in dirt, it's carbon, nitrogen, calcium.
Yeah.
It's exactly what we're made out of too,
but we're dirt.
We're totally dirt. The album Alice in Chains, dirt. I love that album.
The fire part just throws me though. It's like, wait a minute, they look like us, they kind of look like us, and they have parallel lives to ours in their own world, and they have basically our level of technology with a minor bit of mysticism thrown, and we don't quite know how they cross over and cross back. And at one point, one of our ancient kings had a ring that could control them. I mean, show me how does that work?
I want that ring.
It was a ring. Mm-hmm. Just a ring. A ring of what?
With superpowers. But again, the ring could be probably a recite. It could be a couple of words recited that you could have control origin. I know people that do witchcraft and they do control a few of the jinns. I've never seen anything, but that's what they tell me. That's what how they explained it. Yeah. Brings them, as JJ said, brings them money, brings them wealth, brings them this, that. Djinn during Solomon's time, by the way, they were not really enslaved. Yes, they were. I don't look at it as enslavement because. So according to the stories, Solomon ordered the Djinn to build the temple, and they said no. And he's like, I have power over you because this is the power from God that gave to him so he could control Djinn. And he didn't control all the jinns. There was as JJ said, 70 or 72 of them. And he ordered them, and then they said no, and then he used his forceful ring power to build the Djinn, to use the Djinn to build the temple. Once they were done, Solomon, according to the tale, was still on his throne, and the Djinn were so scared of him, supposedly, that they didn't realize he's been dead for a century, and they just kept building and building and building. Only when the termites ate his cane that the body fell to the ground, they realized, like, oh, he's dead. And then they stopped building.
Wow. I never heard that part of the story.
Yeah, they're supposed to be free. But that's like Islamic lore, It could be different in the Bible.
Fascinating. It's amazing how these different religions and their texts kind of fill in the gaps of each other. It's really amazing.
Totally. It is pretty cool.
Well, Samber, now we've hit the... Yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say we've hit the end of our show, but we have an extra 30 seconds if you want to plug something or something.
Well, one more thing about the Djinn, that they, according to Islamic religion and folklore, they do not have freedom. We do, supposedly. Free thought. They don't. They're like angels. They have orders. They have work. They have et cetera, et cetera. I just want to add that. But that's about it.
That's intriguing stuff. Sammer, I want to say thank you for being on the show and providing us with such a great amount of insight. My name is Tim Sudano. This is Paranormal Insight, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.